All right, awesome, guys. So welcome again to our Monday sales training. We've got Jamie here, our guest. Jamie has been with Family First Life. I'll let him give you the time frame. I think it's about a little bit over 2 years, but phenomenal top producer, protecting a lot of families. Also a board member with his agency, growing aggressively, and just helping, empowering a lot of agents to have success in this business and leading from the front. And that's what we're all about, leading from the front here. So Jamie, real quick, for those that don't know you yet, we kind of primed the pump a little bit. We sent out some information about you, your Q&A, your then versus now piece that corporate put out. So they know a little bit, but let them hear it from you. Give them a little bit of your background and kind of how you got into insurance and so forth.
Sure. July 7th will be 2 years in Family First Life. So just under 2 years, about to hit 2 years. I actually got started in Family First Life, not as an agent, but as a staff member. I worked for Family First Life America as their director of marketing, and I helped with a lot of different recruiting and recognition stuff that they have going on there. Kind of what happened for me, and I'll kind of go backwards in my timeline here, but what ended up happening for me was I was working for Grady. My wife was teaching full time. So we had, dual income. So when she lost her income in the pandemic because they didn't know how many kids were coming back due to everyone going virtual, she happened to be the new teacher at that school. So they ended up laying her off. We lost our health insurance and we pretty much lost half of our income. So overnight it was like, okay, we have to do something different. So I decided to get my insurance license. And also the other thing was, I'm making recognition images, and you can imagine over and over and over again, seeing person succeeding after person succeeding. At a certain point, you're kind of like, I can only make, one more recognition image before I kind of pop and say, like, if that person could do it, I can do it. And that's kind of what ended up happening for me. And I ended up deciding to go all in with it. I started off and I said, I'm just going to continue to work for Grady, but I'm also going to, I want to help 2 families per weekend. If I can help 2 families per weekend, I'll replace my wife Katie's income and I'll get us some health insurance. If I do that, we'll continue to make a fine living. Well, I went out and I ended up getting my license in 6 days because I didn't have a lot of time to mess around with it for 30, 45 days. I had to do it quick. I went and got that done. And my first weekend in the field, I ended up helping 8 families. And obviously it doesn't happen like that for everybody. Some people, they come out the gate swinging. Other people, it takes them a little bit to get established. Everybody's different. I have a background in commission-based sales, but I took kind of a break from it to get something more solid, kind of in the career world for a little bit. But I came out, I did 8 families my first weekend, the light bulb went off, and I just decided to kind of become a student of the game. And I said, you know what, if I'm going to really do this, I have to learn. I have to get better. I have to constantly get feedback from people. I studied, Paul McLean, Matt Smith, Grady Polson. Those are kind of my main 3 influences and how I dial the phone and how I work in the home. And I just went for it. And, I was able to do, I got in July. So I had a half a year till the end of the year. I was able to help almost 200 families in that first half a year. And then in my first full year, I did 458 families. And that's all 100% because I was just wanting to get feedback to get better every single day. And that came from, a mixture of, being a part of the live dials and having people just rip me apart when I first started. And, I was super afraid, and we'll dig into that. That's one of my main things that I really, promote is, getting feedback from somebody who's done it. But then I also called, whether it was Grady or Julius or, one of these top producers, out of FFL America. And I called them and I had them give me feedback when I didn't know what I was doing. And I tried to get better, and I tried not to make the same mistake twice. So it's been an incredible experience here, digging just a little bit deeper into the background. I had about 10 years in the direct sales network marketing industry. That's where I met Grady and his family. I left that industry a little bit jaded on some different things that happened, lost, a pretty large income and team, and dealt with a pretty nasty bankruptcy through it. Was in some pretty bad financial ruin. Started a traditional advertising agency. I was basically a lead vendor for roofing and solar companies, and we were generating leads for them to go knock doors and do appointments. Did that for a while. We were $1 million agency. However, if that sounds really good until I show you what the books looked like. And the books say we had 4 employees, 4 partners, and I was basically working 80 hours a week to pay myself $2,000 a month. So I owned a job. I didn't really own a business. So I wasn't happy, ended up kind of dissolving that business. And that's kind of where I found Grady and got started with Family First Life. was really content with the idea of just being a staff member until kind of our world changed and I was forced to get back out there and help people. Now, I've been successful in commission-based sales in the past. Like, why did I not want to be in commission-based sales? It was a roller coaster. And I had been on that roller coaster for so long, I wanted off of it. But I was also in industries that were ever changing and industries that regulation changed, that changed my business. When the pandemic hit, my digital marketing business pretty much almost went away because they didn't, nobody wanted to let people in the homes, and roofing and solar, it's really hard to do virtually, whereas insurance, it can be done virtually. And then even with insurance, we were considered essential. So the insurance business, pretty much doubled in that first year, of the pandemic. So for me, I love the fact that this was something that had been around for, 100 plus years, something that had survived, world wars. It survived, this isn't the first pandemic that, insurance has survived and thrived through. So I knew that nothing was going to happen to the insurance industry. So I found something that was stable and something that I could kind of tie my wagon to. So I've pretty much been all in ever since. I decided to build a team. I did not have the intention of building teams. I built teams in the past, and I was pretty jaded on the idea of building teams because I made a lot of money in previous businesses, or what I thought was a lot of money back then. But no, not many people on my team did equally well, and definitely nobody did better. So I felt weird bringing people along in something that I wasn't sure if they could be successful in. And then I came here, and I know that not everybody's going to find success, but I do know that anybody who is a student of the game, like I talked about here before, who's really willing to put in the work, if the activity is there, failure pretty much is, I don't want to say it's impossible, but if you actually are doing the activity, it's pretty difficult to fail here, as long as you're trying to constantly get better. So that's my whole deal, is just I got really good at dialing the phone. That's my number one thing. If anyone asks me to train on anything, it's going to be on dialing the phone. I love talking about the in-home. I love talking about recruiting. However, at the end of the day, none of that stuff matters if you're afraid to pick up the phone and dial. It's just the start of our whole business. So I think that's the most important thing. But I'm happy to talk about anything. I'm happy to talk about phones, in-home, recruiting, any other parts of the business, finance, structuring your commissions, stewarding your business. I'm happy to talk about anything.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate that background too. And I love the fact that one of the things that I see, and you will probably agree, agents fail is just, staying coachable, staying teachable. And sometimes we'll have folks that say, yeah, I'm coachable. And then you tell them to do something, they don't do it. And or they're not plugging in, or they're not reaching out on a consistent basis. So can you talk about that for you, what that really means, being coachable, being teachable, and how impactful that is to an agent's business, especially when they're new?
100%. There's something I learned a really long time ago from a mentor. It's called the Teachability Index. Okay, so the Teachability Index, there's two sides to it. There's your willingness to learn, and there's your willingness to accept change. Okay, and your teachability index, the way it's determined is you take a number and you determine what are you on a scale of 1 to 10. What's my willingness to learn? What's my willingness to accept change? 10 times 10 equals 100. Okay, so possible score 100. My willingness to learn, I want to learn this information so badly. 10. Okay, what's my willingness to accept change? You're willing to wake up at 5? You're willing to wake up at 4? No. 0. 10 times 0 is 0. You have 0% teachability. Okay, so when I wonder, like, how teachable am I ask the question, what would I be willing to give up to learn the information? Would I be willing to give up watching Netflix for a year to learn the information? Would I be willing to put the golf clubs up for a year? Not forever. Like, not forever. Like, what would I be willing to give up for a period of time to learn this information? Would I be willing to give up my lazy Saturday? Because, guys, I did my numbers the other day. Almost 80% of my production has happened on Saturday. Just Saturday, which is crazy. Okay, I work the other 3 run days too, but Saturday has been everything for me. So, like, would you be willing to give up your Saturday for 2 or 3 years so that you never have to choose to give up a day for anything ever again in the future, and you can choose when you want to work and don't want to work? So for me, what would you be willing to give up to learn that information? That's kind of what teachability means to me.
Absolutely. And when it comes to our business, you mentioned something that we don't talk about enough, and I'm glad you mentioned it. which is you are calling people and you are asking questions. And we have this phrase, not we have it, but we use it. That's like closed mouths don't get fed, right? And how important that is that for a new agent to constantly be reaching up and reaching out and not feeling bad about having to do that?
You can't feel bad. I mean, you're fighting for your family here. Like at the end of the day, yeah, there are hundreds of people in Family First Life you can reach out to. And if one person doesn't answer your text message or your Facebook message or your direct message on Instagram, like, don't be discouraged by that, because there are hundreds of other people who will. And I can't tell you how many people that I cold messaged and just said, hey, I'm not trying to waste your time. If I could have 5 minutes real quick just to hear how you overcome, think about it. Hey, if I can just get a quick 5 minutes to hear how you solidify your appointments to reduce no-shows. Hey, just not trying to waste your time whatsoever. If I could just get 5 minutes on how to minimize chargebacks, whatever that thing is. And sometimes people get on the phone with me, and sometimes people will just send me a YouTube video of a link to a training they did that answered that question. And either one's fine. But I got an opportunity to, they pointed me in the direction of something. When some of them I jumped on the phone with, and guess what? I was on the phone with more than 5 minutes, but I wasn't there to waste their time. I wasn't calling them to complain. I wasn't calling them, telling them some sob story about how I can't figure it out. It was, hey, I need 5 minutes about this very specific thing. Not, hey, Jermaine, I'd love to connect and hear your whole story and hear your background and hear everything because, you inspire me from your podcast. No, it was, hey, I need 5 minutes. I want to learn this very specific thing from you. And that was it. And then guess what? Many of those conversations turned into friendships in more than 5 minutes, but I wasn't trying to be a time waster. I think that's super important. And I think that a lot of top leaders, they do value that. If you're just very direct to the point and say, hey, here's exactly what I'm trying to learn from you. I just need 5 minutes.
And that's so crucial to be successful here, because you're even, the person that hires or recruits you, you are not going to learn everything you need to learn from them. This is that whole analogy of it takes a village, and you have to be actively seeking out the people within the village that have the information that you may need. And I try to stress that to agents. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So a couple things real quick that I want you to touch on. I loved what you talked about on the T&L about the scheduling and time blocking. And if you could touch on that a little bit, and then we could get a little bit into any tips you have for new agents who are getting on the phone, which is, the area that we need to focus most on when we're trying to get going.
Sure, of course. And kind of like, as I said in the TNL, I think the most important couple things for you to focus on, it's like, we already talked about a couple of these already. You got to have a why. You got to know why you're doing this business, because if you don't have a why, it's not going to push you through on the hard days. If you're not coachable, it really doesn't matter, because you have to be a student of the game, or you're not going to get better. And then we got to look at your calendar. Show me your calendar. I'll show you your results. I tell people all the time that I don't even have to know you, but if you just showed me your calendar, I feel pretty confident that like 8 out of 10 times I could predict ballpark what your family helped count is. If I saw your calendar over like 90 days, I could probably ballpark predict it down to, a couple families plus or minus just by looking at your calendar. And I think that's wild when you really think about that. So for me, I mean, calendar is everything. And it's everything because, I try to remain busy, and I also have a family. So I talk a lot about, with my team, taking time versus making time. Okay. Taking time versus making time. Procrastinators make time. Okay. I try to take time. So I take time for my business first. I take time for my family first. I put that into the schedule. I used to make time and nothing would ever get done. I'll make time eventually, but I take time. I open up my calendar, and these are non-negotiable dialing hours. Hey, this is a non-negotiable day that I'm spending with my family, and my phone's actually not going to be with me. This is non-negotiable time that I'm going to meet, that my wife and I are going to go out to breakfast and drop our son off at grandma's, and we're going to have 3 hours we can work on our marriage. Non-negotiable time. But guess what? This is non-negotiable time that I'm dialing the phone. This is non-negotiable time that I'm in the field. One of the things that I didn't talk about on the TNL, which I think is really important, is when I go and I book my schedule to go out in the field. And you could do this, whether you're in the field or telesales, but I book the top of my schedule and the bottom of my schedule first, because it forces me to work. So if I book my 8 a.m. and I book my 8 p.m. and I go out in the field, I'm not coming home, so I might as well fill in the middle with as much activity as possible. So it kind of holds your feet to the fire and holds you accountable there. That even if I did not fill in my schedule to the level in which I wanted to, I'm out there door knocking or dialing in the car or recruiting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think that's the biggest thing that, new agents don't manage well, is that schedule. And especially if it's someone part-time. Let me ask you this, Jamie. If you have someone that's coming on board with you part-time, let's say they work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, because we do have a few of those people on the call. How are you coaching them schedule-wise?
Dialing Thursday and Friday evening to fill up your entire Saturday, Sunday, and not going full-time until you're confidently protecting 5 families a weekend for a couple weekends in a row. We need to prove that you know how to sell insurance. I think that's really important. People come in, they protect their first family, and then they say, I'm going to go full-time. They quit their job. They lose all their established income. Now they don't have any money for leads. I'd rather you come in here and go out and, because again, I talked about 80% of my production being on Saturdays. So it's like, why don't, even if you just work Saturday, you literally just dialed on Thursday, Friday evening to fill up your Saturday. You still took Sunday with your family. You just worked Saturday. There's something amazing that can happen there, but working and filling that whole Saturday. So, there's nothing wrong with being a part-time agent at all, but it's like when you're working, like I'm full. If I'm part-time and I only work Saturdays, I'm full-time on Saturday. That's the attitude that you have to have. Just because you're a part-time agent, like, oh, I'm just going to work 2 appointments on Saturday. Well, you're not going to really get much out of this. And let's talk about like how quickly we want to overcome the learning curve. Let's just, if we do some math here, and let's say it's me versus Jermaine, and I come in, we're both part-time, and I work 2 appointments every Saturday, and he does 10 appointments every Saturday. In a month, he's done 40 appointments. I've done 8. How much further along do you think his learning curve is going to be? So it's like when we talk about part-time agents, there's a reason why some part-time agents, they struggle for a very, very long time, because they don't put the numbers in their favor. And there's so much distance between the time that they do these appointments that they're not getting the constant feedback that they need to actually make adjustments and get better in a short period of time. Whereas if Jermaine does 10 appointments on a Saturday and he calls his mentor in between each of those appointments, he's making adjustments throughout the day. And I can guarantee you his 8th appointment's better than his 2nd appointment, because he's making adjustments throughout the day. Whereas I have 2 appointments, one at 8 a.m. and one at 6 p.m. with a giant gap in the middle, and I'm just kind of go back home and hanging out with my family and doing whatever, and then going out to my appointment. It's just there's not like much, I'm not condensing time frames enough. So it's like if I'm gonna be just working Saturday, I would be filling that Saturday from morning to evening. And then now it's like you go out and you have your first 2, 3, 4, 5 family day. That's a big deal. Now you do that a couple of times, a couple weekends in a row. Well, now what happens when you start working Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday? You start having your first 10, 12, 15 family week. And now you're like, okay, like now the light bulb goes off. I can do this. I can reinvest this back in. I can get leads. I can do this on a consistent basis. And now a part-time agent goes full-time without being financially irresponsible. The other thing, when I talk to a part-time agent and they'd say, well, I want to go full-time. And I say, okay, how much does it take to pay your bills? $3,000 a month. Okay. You have 6, 8 months worth of income in the bank? No. Keep your job. Do this on the weekends. Learn this skill set, condense time frames. Let me teach you how to help 5 families a weekend for a couple weekends in a row. Then you can make the decision to go part-time, but you can't, or you can to go full-time, but you can't blame me if it doesn't work. Whereas some agents, they do that. Well, I decided to go full-time. Well, because sometimes we encourage people to go full-time way too early. They're not ready. So the other thing is 80 to 90%, and I'm just making the statistic up, but it's probably accurate. 80 to 90% of people probably quit in their first 30 days. First 60 days. You don't get somebody making money. You don't get somebody getting their first commission check. They're out. Some people quit after their first dial day. They don't even make it through their whole first dial day. I can't tell you how many people go, oh, this sounds awesome. And then as soon as dial day starts, they thought that every single person they called was going to be, a sale. But then they started getting some rejection and they go, well, these leads aren't what you told me they were. What did we tell you they were? Again, how are you recruiting people? If every single person bought, Andrew Taylor talks to us, every single person bought, they wouldn't be called leads, they'd be called sales. And every single person would do this. And you can't buy sales, we buy leads. Okay. And leads are still better than talking to our friends and family, which we eventually run out of. And leads are still better than door knocking in a random neighborhood. And leads are still better than asking for referrals at the mall and in the Chili's parking lot. If I have a list of 100 names and phone numbers, 85 of them tell me to pound sand or don't answer, but I set 15 appointments, I don't care about the other 85. And the problem that most new agents have is they care about the 85. I care about the 15 that I was able to reduce sales pressure enough with to allow me to come over to their house and serve them with life insurance. And yeah, I get 15, 5 of them probably still no show me. I sit with 10, I sell 5. I do that twice a week. I help 10 families in a week. That's the formula. 30 families, 10 of them are going to no show you. You're going to sit with 20. You're going to sell 10. Now, obviously, not everybody does that. That's a 50% closing ratio. Most agents, they start 10, 20, 30%, 50% if you do this consistently. You want to get into the 70, 80% range. You get that with repetition. You get that with doing things over and over and over and over again. And, guess what? How many times do you think I've overcome think about it? How many times do you think someone's told me think about it? I've sat on 2,000 plus appointments. So you can imagine how many times do you think I've dialed the phone and had somebody say, I'm not interested, or I didn't fill that out. And some people go, well, they probably didn't actually fill it out. Well, I can tell you from dialing the phone tens and tens and tens of thousands of times that people lie. This will probably be the biggest thing that I give you guys that I've been trying to give everybody over the last couple of weeks of we've really started to figure this out. I argue with people all the time that an instant internet lead, a new internet life lead, a 1 month internet lead, a 3 month internet lead is the highest intent lead in the company. It is higher intent than direct mail. It's higher intent than Facebook final expense. People, they look at me like funny, like, what do you mean? Direct, how can it get more higher intent than direct mail? Here's how I'll tell you. The person who received the postcard in the mail, they did not ask for the postcard. The postcard came to their house and they decided to fill it out. It's still very high intent, but they did not ask for the postcard. The Facebook final expense, they did not ask for that advertisement. Just like I didn't ask for, the billboard as I'm driving down the road, but I'm like, oh, that food sounds good. I'm going to pull off and I'm going to go get some food. That's what I compare Facebook final expense to. I'm scrolling on Facebook and I see an advertisement. I go, that looks good. I should probably get some final expense coverage, or I should see what it looks like. The internet lead is the only person who went on Google and typed in life insurance. But here's the caveat. So they're the highest intent because they're the only person who was actually searching for it. But the caveat is they don't just fill out one form. They want comparison. And then here's what happens. Their phone starts blowing up. And guess what? They fill out our form. It goes into the FFL CRM. You buy that lead. You are the only agent who is buying that lead out of our CRM. Nobody else in FFL or any other industry or any other IMO is getting that lead from that form. That's true. That is an exclusive lead. However, the behavior of an internet lead is I also scroll down to the next one and I'm trying to find how much does it cost. I'm trying to find some tool that says it costs $74 a month, but guess what? That tool doesn't exist. Every single one of them puts you into a rotation. And then now here comes the telemarketers and the call centers. So you have to be aware of that. And people, they struggle to call internet leads because they think they're mad. But guys, a pissed off internet lead is my favorite client in the world. They're actually the most loyal client in the world. Because if you get a pissed off internet lead and you get your foot in the door and you establish credibility and trust with them, if it was that hard to book an appointment with them, how hard do you think it's going to be for somebody to replace your policy? How hard is it going to be for anybody to come behind you? So when we talk about booking a pissed off internet lead, you have to empathize with them. You have to call out the elephant in the room. What is the elephant in the room? That their phone is blowing up. So everybody else, hey, this is Jamie giving you a call back in regards to that inquiry you sent into my office about the life insurance. They go into their script. Hey, Jermaine, this is Jamie getting back to you in regards to that inquiry you sent into my office about the life insurance. As soon as you did, your phone started blowing up with telemarketers and spam calls. I'm actually the manager calling to apologize, trying to get those phone calls to stop. My job is to get that informational packet out there to you like you originally requested before your phone started blowing up. I've got a delivery address, the 123 Main Street. Is that correct? And here's the deal is I would wait until they said they were mad to overcome the objection. Okay. I would wait until they said, I'm not interested. Hey, are you not interested because you can't afford it? Or are you not interested because you don't think you can qualify? Hey, are you not interested because you're actually not interested, or because your phone's blown up with telemarketers? My phone's blown up with telemarketers. Okay, great. I'm the manager calling to apologize. And I would book those. I would, but I realized that I could reduce the sales pressure much quicker by calling it out in the first sentence. And you don't have to use my script. I do this for call-in leads too. Call-in mortgage leads. When you get a silver call-in lead versus a gold, silver means they called in, but they didn't finish all the prompts. Gold, they finished it. Gold's obviously a little bit higher intent. The silver, I call and I'm like, Jermaine, this is Jamie calling you about that inquiry you sent to my office. You received about a dozen postcards. I'm sure it was super annoying. You probably called into the phone number to try to get those postcards to stop. I'm just the underwriter who's been and I call it out, and something happened with the right person is it reduces the sales pressure. And the person who would have hung up on you normally because you reduced it in the first sentence stays on the phone with you and you book the appointment. So I found that it's been super helpful for myself. It's been super helpful for a lot of our agents, just calling out what they're experiencing right in the first sentence. It's still the same script. It's still the exact same principles. It's just, I know your phone's blowing up. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's not. So it's like, how can I be the anti-telemarketer? How can I be the anti-salesperson? How can I be the person that's different than every other call center person that's calling them? That's how I can do it, by just recognizing the fact that I know their phone's blowing up. I sat down with an internet lead the other day, guys, and I don't like to swear, but I promise you this dude's phone rang like 24 times during the meeting, and he declined every single one of them. Every single one of them. And it was a door knock. And I went up to his house and I caught him in his mailbox and I said, Richard, hey, you filled out this form looking for more information on the life insurance. Do you not answer phone numbers you don't know? He's like, no, I do not answer phone numbers I do not know. This was a total mistake. I did not realize what was happening. But here's what I found out about Richard is that he wanted the life insurance. He didn't understand what was going to happen when he filled out the form. You try to get a quote on a car, you will have every dealership in the county calling you. If you've ever tried to get health insurance, it's the exact same thing. I tried to get health insurance last year, and now it's like I have empathy for our clients and what they're going through, but they wanted the information. And you have to be like 100% convinced in your mind and your heart that they want the information, and you have to have that attitude when you dial people. I am 100% assumptive that they wanted the information, but they're just mad about the fact that their phone is blowing up. You have the highest intent lead out there, and you have to learn how to dial it. You can get the best ROI, but most people don't dial it like that. They call, the person says, oh, I've already got it taken care of, or I'm not interested. And they put their tail between their legs and they say, thanks, have a good day. Click next. But it's like, if you just actually were willing to fight for that appointment, you could have got it. So it's like, for me, I try to teach people, especially on live dials, to swing for the fences or get hung up on. It's like you can, especially with live dials, it's a lot of people, they'll get on live dials and they'll dial muted. They'll never unmute. And when you're dialing muted and nobody can hear you, nobody can hear when you don't fight for the appointment. But when you put yourself on the dial schedule, this is what happened to me, is I dialed for a long time, not on live, and it would take me 700 to 900 dials every single dial day to book my appointment. So I never had a problem with the number of dials. I would get my number of in-home appointments and I'd be good, but I wasn't that good on the phones. I was pretty decent in the home, but I would just work and work and work to make sure the activity was in my favor, so I had enough appointments. But then I was like, well, I kind of want to get more efficient on the phones so I can have a shorter dial day. And Grady was like, dude, unmute. And I was like, well, dude, I kind of suck at dialing. He's like, dude, but here's the thing, we can give you feedback. And then I started dialing live, and a couple producers were like, hey, don't pause there. Hey, that pause right there, that's the reason why they're jumping on you right there. Like, if you just got rid of that pause, everything would change. Hey, you're asking yes or no questions. We ask yes or yes questions. Hey, you're asking close-ended questions. Give them two options. Give them the illusion that they're picking the time. So it's like, hey, 6:15 or 6:45, which one do you want? I'm coming at 6:30 no matter what. But which one do you want? 6:15 or 6:45? Not, hey, I've got a 6:30. Does that work? No. Now I'm on my back foot. I don't want to be on my back foot. I do not want to be on defense. I want to be on offense. 6:15 or 6:45, which one works best? But I didn't get to that point unless I cleared the schedule properly. I know they're actually going to be home, but I didn't know these things. All I had was a script in front of me. But then I got on live dials. I started dialing live, and then I started getting feedback live on calls like this from top producers. And then they wouldn't just say, hey, do this. They would explain why. And then we did it long enough that then I started dialing live all the time. And I started having fun with it. And it became something I looked forward to. I think, Sean and I talk about this all the time. The number one epidemic in the insurance industry is dialing. People saying, I hate dial day. People saying, I love the in-home, but I hate to dial the phone. You have to learn to love dial day. You have to learn to love it. I wake up on dial day. Like, what crazy thing is an internet lead going to say to me today? What crazy thing am I going to hear unmuted in front of our whole team? And how am I going to pretend like I don't care and keep moving through the phone call and book the appointment? Because that's the deal. Unemotional, uninterested, busier than they are. I'm coming over. That's it, period. I'm booking this appointment or you're hanging up the phone on me. So for me, I started to just build up reps of, especially when I'm unmuted, like something happens, you try harder. So like if I'm dialing by myself, I even noticed it today. If I'm dialing by myself or I'm muted and somebody says something, I would just give up. Okay. But if I'm dialing live, I don't want to be the person who doesn't follow the system. I don't want to be the person who's not trying. So I start like overcoming objections that I wouldn't normally try to overcome when I'm muted. And then it's like when you're brand new and that happens, and the first time you overcome an objection on live dials and then you book the appointment, it's like a light bulb goes off and you're like, well, I can do that again. And I can do that again and again and again and again. So it's like there's so much power in just putting yourself out there, not only getting feedback, but even if no one's listening, we could have 100 people on here. You guys could all have your volume down, not even listening to me. But if I have my microphone unmuted and I assume that even one of you are listening, even one of you are trying to learn, I'm probably going to try harder. And just literally the act of trying harder, like you're going to start booking more appointments. The act of not taking no for an answer and just being persistent until they hang up the phone, being willing to dial somebody back when they hang up on you. That's been one of the top things for me. You don't let me get through my first 3 sentences and confirm the first piece of information, I'll call you 28 times in a row. I don't care. If you don't know who I am and why I'm calling, it's one thing if you deny me once you know who I am and why I'm calling. But if you don't even let me get through my first sentence, I can't even confirm a piece of information. You can't actually tell me what you're not interested in. I will call you back over and over and over and over and over again. It doesn't matter. And people will bite your head off sometimes, and sometimes they won't. I've had people call me every single name you could possibly imagine in the book. And I've also booked appointments with some of those people, protected them, and realized they actually were people who really needed it. And they just were sick of all the phone calls. So we have to be able to reduce sales pressure with these people. And sometimes we have to call them back and say, hey, I'm not a salesperson. Hey, I'm not a telemarketer. My job's just to get this information out to you. You fill this out. Like, I'm assumptive. Like, just because somebody's mad, you still have to assume they filled it out, because they did. Like, who's going online and filling out random forms? Like, why? Who's doing that for fun? And granted, yes, there are a very, very small percentage of leads that are wrong phone numbers, wrong address, wrong email. Somehow somebody filled out something they didn't know. But the vast majority of them, the people knew exactly what they were filling out. Don't let this like tiny little couple percentage minority make you like think the whole batch is spoiled. Because then it's like you get the couple that, were a bad lead. Yeah. And then you have the person who's pissed off and you say they're all bad leads. No, there was the one person who had a wrong phone number, wrong address. And then there was the one guy who was mad he's receiving phone calls who actually really wanted life insurance, but you weren't able to get through that to get an appointment to protect them. So it's just, you have to have that mentality when you're going to dial day. And it's just, internet leads are the most available. They're most available across the entire company. There are lead discounts in them every single week. So it's like, why would you not tie your wagon to that? There's nothing wrong with other lead types, but if you can learn how to dial an internet lead, you are unstoppable. Like you can dial any lead in the entire industry if you can dial internet leads. So if you can learn to get good on those, everything else is a piece of cake. Does that all make sense, Jermaine?
Yeah, man, 100%. Like I had questions surrounding that stuff, and you were just hitting every one of them, bro. So I appreciate that, and I love that idea of taking off the sales pressure and that mentality of how to approach leads, because that's really what we do, and it positions you to almost be able to book any appointment,
Mm-hmm.
and no matter what lead. And let me ask you this, and then I want to transition to a little bit of your in-home, because for 458 families protected, you definitely have some tips that you could share. But
Sure.
when you look at the number of leads, I get this question a lot as we're recruiting and agents and everything. Well, how many leads do I need for my first dial day? So what's your advice there?
Between 100 and 150. Doesn't really matter what lead type. Also, like, transparently, there's been some crazy things that have been going on right now with phone companies and things getting marked as spam. That is totally a thing that's happening right now. So you got to make sure you go through all the proper channels to verify phone numbers, to make sure you're not getting marked as spam. If you're using phone burner, you got to make sure that you're using the proper channels to have multiple phone numbers. But if you're having a very low answer rate, you got to start reaching out to different leaders about what they're doing to not get marked as spam. If you're having everybody answer the phone, but they're telling you no, that's not a problem. We got to work on your script. But if you're sitting there listening to the dial tone all day, you're like, I'm having a horrible dial day, you probably just got marked as spam. So you gotta realize that right off the bat. What was the question again?
It was just how many leads you recommend.
How many leads do I recommend? Yep. So 100 to 150 is what I would recommend. Just if I'm booking 10%, which you should be, I should be able to book up a 2-day run. And obviously I'd love to have more. And as you get better, you take 100 to 150 leads and you turn that into 20, 25 appointments, you double book a bunch. But then, like minimum, I don't really want to go out if I don't have, 12 to 16.
Perfect, man. Perfect. Well, talk to us a little bit, Jamie, about in-home. Obviously, the biggest portion of in-home is setting the table, as I like to call it, setting the expectation. So how do you do that, and what's your tips there for agents?
Sure. There's a video that Paul McLean made a long time ago called The 8 Steps to a Final Expense In-Home. That video was the foundation of everything that I do. When I finished setting my first set of appointments, I realized I really don't know that much about the in-home. I spent so much time learning how to dial that now, holy crap, I actually have to go meet somebody. What do I say? And then I the concept of the in-home made sense to me, but for whatever reason, just there were some things that I was like, how am I going to remember all that? So I was like, well, if I could, Paul McLean's in-home is so good. Like, what if I forget what to say? I just want to say it like Paul. If I could say it like Paul, everyone would buy. And I was like, I wish I could just take my notes from boot camp into the home. And then I kind of had a light bulb go off. And I said, why don't I just take my notes from boot camp into the home? No, seriously though.
Nice and easy,
like,
yeah.
No, it's like what does the client know? Like, they don't have an insurance license. They don't know how the appointment is supposed to go. They don't know what I'm even looking down at. So I took my notes into the home so I wouldn't forget what to say. And they didn't even realize what was going on. And I started feeling confident because I had something to look back at. Most new age, they think they have to be polished on their first time. They think that they have to go in and have it all memorized. So here's what ended up happening for me is I took my notes and I put the word agenda at the top and I typed it out instead of having it in my notebook. And now it's like in my white binder, on one side, I have my state license, and on the other side, I have my in-home agenda. And I slide my agenda between them and I. And for them, it's a structure of how is this appointment going to go? And for me, it's notes on so I don't forget what to say. So that's how I started. Now I literally, when I'm setting the table, I'm like walking them through the agenda, like pointing them through. So I'm like, hey, this is the lead card. It's like at the top, it's literally like why you filled why you filled this out. And like, I'm like walking them through it. So it's like, hey, here's this lead card that got sent into my office. Can you confirm for me that your name is correct, is spelled correct, date of birth, phone number, email, address, mortgage amount, or amount of final expense you were looking for? Can you just confirm that all that information looks correct? Yes. Okay, perfect. And here's my state license, just so you can verify I'm not some crazy person. Go ahead, pull out your cell phone. Please take a picture of this real quick, just for your records. Okay, great. All right, Jermaine, can you tell me a little bit more about, why you fill this out? Most people typically are looking for something to take care of, family, leave something behind for their kids, make sure there's no burdens, pay off a house, income replacement, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what the reason is. A lot of people will give you a very surface level reason right away. And I don't try to go crazy deep, but I try, if they go, I was just looking for more information. Okay. And you're looking for more information on what exactly? Like who was it that you wanted to protect if something happened to you? Well, my daughter. Okay. Well, so what did you want to make sure your daughter didn't have to deal with? Well, I wanted to make sure that she didn't have to take care of my final expenses and she could pay off the rest of my bills. Okay. So basically, Jermaine, what I'm hearing you say, this is important. What I'm hearing you say, you have to restate back to them why they're looking for the information. So what I'm hearing you say is that you wanted to make sure if you passed away, your daughter wouldn't have to deal with any burdens that you might leave behind. She wouldn't have any financial, expenses that she'd have to deal with around, the burial, cremation. And, if you could leave her a little something extra, that would make you feel good. Yes, that's exactly it. So I'm just trying to restate back to them why they filled it out in my own words, getting them to say, yes, that's the first close. I'm closing them like 7-8 times. I'm not counting. But like when I look, if I could look back and there's a fly on the wall, I'm getting them to say yes, like 7 or 8 times in a trial close.
Yeah.
So that's why they filled it out. First yes. First yes is when they book the appointment. Second yes is when, hey, shoes on or off. The kitchen table right here. Yes, right here. Okay. And this is why you filled it out. Yes. Okay, perfect. All right. So Jermaine, no fancy presentation. I literally throw my hands up. I'm like, no fancy presentation. I'm not the insurance sales guy. I'm just the underwriter. Here's the deal. I work with all of these different companies right here. I've got the credibility sheet out in front of me. I work with all of these different companies. I can shop around and act like a broker for you. And I'm also what's considered non-captive. Captive is like, State Farm, Allstate, etc. Where if I worked for them, I'd be required to show you their product. Jermaine, I have zero loyalty to any insurance carrier. It does not matter to me who you end up with, or even if you end up with anybody. Doesn't matter to me at all. My job is to make a good recommendation and see what you might be eligible for. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, perfect. Flip it over. Here's how this is going to work. Show them the financial inventory. I'm going to ask you 2 minutes on your health, 2 minutes on your finances. Based on how you answer those questions, I'm going to make a recommendation for you. I flip it back over. I'm pointing at all the companies again. I'm going to make a recommendation for you. I'll show you a couple of options. And if we see something that makes sense, we're going to submit a request for coverage to see if you qualify. Does that sound fair? Yes, that sounds fair. So now they've agreed to the process. They told me why they filled it out. Yes. And now they've agreed that they're going to go through the process that here's exactly how this agenda is going to go. And then we're going to submit a request for coverage to see if you can qualify. Yes. So I set the table in that way. I start going through the financial inventory. I ask all the questions. One big thing that I do, a lot of us get caught up in all the medications, and you should. When you're brand new, hey, Jermaine, can you go grab the bottles, please? Can you please go grab the bottles? And then I write them all down, and I Google them if I don't know what they're for, and I put in parentheses next to them what they're for. So then when I call the hotline, I say he's taking 3 things for blood pressure, 1 blood thinner, et cetera, versus trying to butcher saying the name of the medication, which none of us are pharmacists. So in the beginning, I said, go grab the bottles so I can learn. I think if you're brand new, you should tell them to go grab the bottles. As I've gotten more advanced, I just go straight to the knockout questions. Heart attack, stroke, cancer. No. Blood pressure, diabetes, pills, insulin. No. Asthma, COPD, thyroid issues, anxiety, depression, kidney, liver disease, any DUIs, reckless driving. Do you skydive on the weekends? No? Okay, got it. And I just ask them quick knockout questions. And if any of them are yes, okay, now tell me a little bit more about that. What kind of medications do you take for that? And I always ask the final question, is there anything else you've been prescribed in the past that you've either stopped taking or chosen not to take? It's such a major key. I can't tell you how many people are like, yeah, I'm perfectly healthy. Then I asked that question, like, well, I did actually, have a heart attack back, 3 years ago. I'm like, well, I just asked you if you had a heart attack. Well, yeah, but I thought you were saying like more recently than that. No, okay. So it's just you have to. Is there anything else you've been prescribed in the past that you stopped taking or chosen not to take? I can't tell you how many times I've gone through. I've hyped up Americo, and then they got denied, and I didn't know why. It was because I didn't dig deep enough into the prescriptions. So you don't have to be a product expert. There are helplines for that, but you do have to. Like the one thing I never do is I never get really like I'm never selling one company. So if I'm selling one company and then they get denied, I have to pull the rug out from underneath them and say, sorry, you can't get that. Now, actually, it's more expensive. Yeah. So I talk about never getting on your back foot. I talked about that when it came to dialing the phone, never getting on your back foot in the home either. Getting on your back foot is, hey, at Americo, it's going to be $50. Just kidding, denied. Okay, we can go over to AmAm. It's going to be great, and it'll be $80 a month. And they're like, well, I don't even want it anymore. Versus what I do is if I'm in a situation where I'm not sure if they're going to get approved because I run the prescription check, it comes back denied, I don't say anything, I pivot to another carrier. What I do is I actually quote the worst case scenario and apply for the best case scenario. So this is like a major key that I do with final expense. I love AmAm for this because they've got 3 different rate classes, immediate, graded, ROP. I'll quote for ROP. So let's say Jermaine wants $20,000 for final expense. Even though I think he might be able to get immediate coverage, I still quote for ROP. So I quote $20,000 and it's going to cost $205 a month. And then when you go to fill out the application, it gives you an option to quote for the premium or to quote for the face amount. So I quote for the premium, but I apply for immediate coverage. So I'm applying for $205 a month and I'm maximizing the amount of face amount that he'll get for that. So what ends up happening is I was able to get to the top of Jermaine's budget. So I showed him the more expensive option by quoting him for the worst case scenario, but then I applied for immediate coverage. So then Jermaine ends up getting approved for immediate, and for $205, it's actually $35,000. So then I can surprise him and go, hey, they actually gave you more coverage. So I do that all versus, hey, it was $149 for $20,000. Just kidding. It's now $205 for $20,000. And they're like, I don't even want it anymore. So when I'm in a situation or weird underwriting, I always quote for the worst case scenario, apply for the best case scenario. And then if it ends up being the worst case scenario, they got exactly what I told them they were going to get. And I'm not on my back foot. And if it ends up being the best case scenario, then I surprise them and they don't want to cancel because I got them more than what they were expecting. So that's just a random tip. When I'm in like a situation where it's a graded ROP where you think they might be able to get immediate because they get, denied for Americo. But before I even get to that point, I'll back up a little bit. So I just did the financial inventory. And sorry if this is going a little long. I'm gonna finish this last part up here because I got to jump on another call. I'm pitching the concept of the insurance before I'm pitching the product of the specific company. So hey, what I'm seeing here, there's a couple of different options. We'll see what could work. But what most people do in your situation is they look for something that would maybe take care of 12, 18, 24 months worth of mortgage payments. So their kids don't have to worry about losing the house. They have time to figure things out. You see why something like that would be valuable, right? Yes. Hey, what most people do here in your situation is they want to make sure, obviously, they can take care of a basic cremation, but they also want to have some extra expenses built in case, you get rushed to the hospital and ambulance and they got to pay ambulance fees, extra money built in case family wants to fly in for the funeral, extra money built in case you want to leave behind some income replacement for your wife. So what most people do in your situation is they're looking for between, $15,000 and $30,000 worth of coverage. You see why something like that will be valuable, right? Yes. So now they're bought in to the concept. They're not bought into the company. So I go, hey, it's Americo and they got the non-smoker advantage and all these things. And I go, just kidding, you got denied. Sorry, now we got to go over to this other company that's going to charge you as a smoker. They don't even want it anymore. But it's like, hey, the concept of why this solution makes sense, that's important to you, right? Yes. Now I can start digging into specific products. Obviously, use your underwriter, use your helpline, listen to them. If they say it's Americo, I always run the prescription check first. Just to verify, I don't say, hey, I'm running an Americo prescription check. I open up the application and I say, hey, real quick, you familiar with HIPAA? We're just going to run a quick prescription check just to verify the medications you say you take are actually accurate and see what you might qualify for. Just confirm for me your cell phone, email, social. And then I don't look up from my paper and they just start saying the numbers. I haven't gotten objection on social in a very long time because I don't look them in their eyeballs when I ask for their social. That's weird. Give me your social security number. It's what's your cell phone number? Okay, got it. Your email, got it. Your social, got it. I don't look up from the paper. Same thing when I ask for the voided check. Okay, so we got 3 options here. Which one of these makes the most sense? The middle one. Okay, perfect, Jermaine. Go ahead and grab me your driver's license and a voided check or something with bank info, and we'll go ahead and get started. And I don't look up until they get up from the table. And if they get up from the table, I made the sale. If they don't get up from the table, I'll keep looking down until they say something. And I'll be super awkward about it. I've sat there for minutes. And then people get up and they go get it, or they have an objection and now it's time to fight a little bit, which is fine. You know, you go back to their why. So there's a million other things we could dig into the in-home. Any questions before I got to jump off of here?
Yeah, man, that is gold, bro. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I guess the last question I'll wrap up with, ties into what we're talking about with coaching and coachability. What training videos can you recommend to an agent that's trying to work their way up and increase their production, protect more families, and improve their skill set from dial-in to in-home?
Did you say what? I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. What training
videos? Yeah, like any specifics, maybe a specific producer or a specific video title or anything like that you'd recommend?
I mean, I'm obsessed with Paul McLean stuff. So like I always watch everything that he puts out. Grady Polson, he puts out a lot of really, really good interviews on Family First Life America. I love watching Zach Tardowski and all the people, their producers. They're some of the highest level producers in the entire company. I try to keep it really simple, guys. There's a million pieces of information out there, and I've seen a lot of them, but I try to find people that fit my style. And I try to get obsessed with their videos and try not to, because it's like, if you start watching everybody's stuff, now it's like, what's the flavor of the week? What's the new thing to try this week? I remember when I first was in my first couple months, I had a couple really good months. And then I had a week where I went like 1 for 27 and just got my butt kicked. And Grady's like, dude, what happened? I was like, well, I tried to say this and I tried to say that. And I watched this video from this person and tried to say that like they do. I was like, I'm trying to like really advance like some of the things I say in the home. He's like, dude, stop trying stuff. Go back to what works. Be yourself. And then I stopped watching everything. And if I did watch everything, I watched it with like a lens of discernment. Like, that's not really my style. I'm not going to use that. And I found people like, just because somebody talks about the bloody driver's license and, what happens if they don't wake up tomorrow and they use this language, if that's not my style. So I don't do that. If that's your style, go for it. But like for me, it sounded weird if I did it. So you got to find people that fit your style and you got to get obsessed with all their stuff, learn their word tracks and watch everything they put out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes 100% sense, man. Right on the money, Jamie. So, dude, thank you. I can't say thank you enough. I think this is a huge impact to our team, and we're going to get this video out. So appreciate you being on. Everybody, let's make it a great rest of the month. We're going to finish the month strong, and we'll see you guys 7/11, and we'll see you next week, July 4th for Chris Marseille's training. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate you.